The PTO installation procedure for Ford diesel and gas models. Prior to doing any repairs, service, or maintenance, understand and follow all company safety rules and vehicle lockout/tagout procedures. The PTO kit should include, but is not limited to, the following components: the PTO, a geared adapter, PTO gaskets, standard hex and stud bolts, lock nuts, a pressure switch, a wiring harness, a transmission fluid line, elbow fittings, and installation instructions from the manufacturer. This demonstration provides installation instructions that apply to several different Ford truck models. It's important that you read and follow the specific PTO model instructions that came with your PTO to ensure your installation will be done correctly. Cut the wires off the PTO pressure switch and install onto the port located on the hydraulic valve cap. With the VTEC system, this switch functions only as a plug. Remove the transmission linkage and bracket located next to the PTO cover plate. Do not use a pry bar when removing the shift cable. The plastic component can easily be broken or damaged. Remove the bracket with a 1/2-inch socket and move this out of the way. Note: running the engine for 1 minute prior to removing the PTO cover plate will move fluid into the transmission and prohibit fluid loss when the plate is removed. Remove the PTO cover plate bolts with a 1/2-inch socket or ratcheting boxed-end wrench. Do not remove the PTO cover plate from the transmission until after you have all the new studs installed. This will prohibit any jam nuts from falling into the transmission during this procedure. Install the shoulder studs into the housing. Note the location of the studs. The two longer studs are at 12 and 6 o'clock, and the shorter one is at 8 o'clock. The shoulder of the stud should be flush with the transmission mounting surface. With the studs installed, remove the jam nuts. Now, remove the PTO cover plate. Do not remove the original gasket, but leave this in place. Slide the adapter onto the studs and into the transmission. Place the new gasket over the two alignment sleeves on the geared adapter. Place the PTO over the studs and position so that the PTO gears mesh with those of the geared adapter. Attach a self-locking nut onto the top shoulder stud. Finger tighten to catch only a couple threads. This is necessary to keep the PTO in place while you pull the unit out far enough to install a locking nut on the 8 o'clock stud. Start this nut with your fingers. Note that there is less room to work on the gas engine models. Follow the same procedure for both gas and diesel. Once you have several threads started, use an open-end 14mm wrench to move the nut down on the stud. Get the 8 o'clock stud's lock nut well on the stud before placing the bottom nut and remaining bolts in position. Use the 14mm 12-point boxed-end wrench for tightening the top and bottom lock nuts. The top left bolt is difficult to tighten given its position. We have found the following combination to work quite well here: a 3/8 ratchet, a 3-inch extension, a universal joint, and a 15 mm socket. Use a 15 mm socket or combination wrench to tighten the remaining bolts. When doing the final pass for tightening the bolts on the PTO, use a star or cross pattern. Reinstall the linkage and brackets back onto the transmission. Line up the shift cable and press into place. Then reinstall the linkage bracket. Remove the plug from the transmission pressure port with a 9/16 socket or wrench. Install the 90-degree fluid line fitting and position to face 9 o'clock. This also uses a 9/16 open-end wrench. The fitting has a rubber O-ring. Do not over-tighten. Connect the transmission fluid line between the PTO and the main pressure port on the transmission. Finger tighten the PTO fitting first, followed by the transmission port fitting. Tighten both with a 9/16 open-end wrench. This concludes the PTO installation.